everybody, hope you're all keeping really well and welcome to my spoiler-free discussion of Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. As I said, this will be a spoiler-free discussion, so feel free to watch this even if you haven't read the book. I'll be keeping away from any major spoilers and I'll possibly bring in a small spoiler section at the end, possibly, if I have anything to say that I haven't already covered in my spoiler-free section. Just editing at the moment, and just in terms of whether or not I really cover spoilers, I do and I don't, I guess, because most of the stuff I point out or the stuff I refer to is things that have already happened in the original myth. So personally, I don't consider those to be spoilers because, you know, that's out in the world, that's been a story for thousands of years already. So, you know, if you don't know anything about the myth of Ariadne and you really don't want to know a single thing before going into this, I would then say, yeah, okay, it's got spoilers, but you know, I don't tell you how it ends. I don't really go into lots of specifics. I kind of just go through, you know, I'll just refer to the plot points that, you know, if you know anything about the myth of Ariadne or you know anything about the myth of Phaedra, then you'll know this already, sort of thing. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It's not really spoilers in my opinion because obviously it's the original myth. You know, you can go and Google this already, but yeah, if you really want to go into this and just have no idea what the tale of Ariadne is about, yeah, this is technically a spoilers video then. So a quick synopsis of this book. It is a retelling of the story of Ariadne. Plain and simple, it follows both Ariadne and her sister Phaedra throughout not only the events, the famous events surrounding Theseus and the Minotaur, but it follows Ariadne right up through her entire life until her death, and the same thing with her sister Phaedra. And yeah, I have mixed opinions, mixed feelings on this book really. It wasn't exactly what I wanted from it, and it wasn't what I was expecting either, so I'll try and explain why. As I said, you know, the plot just follows Ariadne's life, and so you see her as a child with her mother Pasiphae and her sister Phaedra, and the sort of relationship the three of them have, as well as her sort of friendship almost with Daedalus, the inventor, as well as her very tense relationship she has with her father Minos. And it's made very clear from the beginning that the author wants to comment or at least explore the story of Ariadne through the lens of how women in the myths and in history in general have been erased, or their parts in the story get played down in favour of the men. So a big thing in the beginning is Ariadne and Phaedra's nurse telling them the story of Medusa and how Medusa got raped by Poseidon, but then she was made to suffer for it, and that sort of angle on the original myth, because Athena, instead of taking her anger out on Poseidon, who was the perpetrator of all this, takes it out on an innocent woman who got violated, and now she's cursed to live like this for the rest of her life and to have men who will go after her to try and kill her constantly, all because she was violated by Poseidon in the first place. So you understand from the get-go that that's what the author's going for with this story, because similarly with Ariadne, you know, she, in the original myth, she helps Theseus. You know, he wouldn't have been able to do it without her, but obviously, you know, it's Theseus and the Minotaur, not Ariadne and the Minotaur. Her part in it definitely gets played down. She's just a trophy for Theseus that he then ends up abandoning, you know. So it's very clear that that's what the author was going for, and I'll tell you right now, that is not what we get, which I am very disappointed in, because not only in the story does that it set up that that's what it's going to do, but in the acknowledgements she makes a point of saying that's what she was trying to do with this book, and it's just not. The first part was my favourite really, is because as I said, it followed her entire life, so the part with Theseus and the Minotaur actually only covers the first sort of bit, I guess. You know, it doesn't really cover as much of the book. The rest of it's then about her time on Naxos and how she marries Dionysus and becomes his wife, yada yada yada. And yeah, and I just felt that the events with the Minotaur and stuff are so important to her story and how she ends up on Naxos and sort of how she gets sort of betrayed by Theseus, that I felt that it being skipped over just didn't really work at all. I just felt that, yeah, I just really felt that they should have perhaps spent a bit more time fleshing out that arc. And her relationship with Theseus as well, it's very insta-love. I mean, I get that they're going for the, you know, he's using her and she's infatuated, so I kind of understand that up to a point, but I just think it would have hit more as a betrayal and more on the commentary that the author wants to do if we'd actually show why Ariadne had fallen in love with Theseus if they'd actually been able to spend any sort of time together. I mean, obviously it's very difficult because he's a prisoner, but like, I just feel it was just so... You're just told that she's in love with him, and she just decides she's in love with him. And I get that they're maybe trying to make a comment on her naivety and how she sort of just fell for the first sort of handsome man that looked her way twice. But I don't know. It just kind of didn't sit well with me because, you know, we're really supposed to believe that she just decides to betray her entire family for this guy when she literally spends like no time with him. You know, he tells her this one story about how he sort of got to where he was, and he's very, you know, tries to sort of go, oh, I'm a tragic hero, yada yada kind of thing. And she just kind of, but by that point she's already decided she's going to free him and stuff, that's why she's talking to him and stuff. So yeah, I don't know, I just didn't really like that, to be honest. And her character as well, she's not very, she barely develops, she barely changes, you don't really get much of an exploration, she just feels very two-dimensional to me. And all the characters do, up to a point. Like, I really just didn't connect with any of these characters, despite the fact that there are several that are throughout the entire story. I have to say the only character I sort of not felt for but sort of understood was her mother Pasiphae, because again, going back to this whole idea of, you know, the gods using humans and the gods using women and then getting punished for it. You know, Pasiphae was cursed to fall in love with the bull that then brought about the Minotaur. So, but then, you know, she's the one that's ridiculed for it, despite the fact that it's Poseidon, I think, that puts that curse on her. You know, as I said, they're trying to make this big commentary on how the women get used and abused, and history will only ever say, oh, it was their fault because they're women, sort of thing. It just, but then, yeah, I feel like hers is the only story where you actually feel like that was actually developed, even though, you know, it's not really her story, that's only in a few chapters. So I thought her character was the most interesting, but again, you know, we barely see her, so yeah. Ariadne, very, very two-dimensional, and I just really didn't connect with her character at all. And same with Phaedra, her sister. You know, in the acknowledgement she makes, the author says something about how this is a story of sisterhood. I mean, it's really not. It follows two sisters and that's about it. We barely get what their relationship with each other is. We barely really get their opinions of one another, and then they spend most of the book apart until they're adults. And then they sort of see each other again towards the end, and it's just made very clear that neither of them have changed as people. Neither of them have learnt from their mistakes and their lessons with Theseus. They're just exactly the same people that they were to begin with, which I can kind of understand up to a point because it's a Greek story, it's a tragedy, it's also following the original myths quite closely, or at least, well, it's following one of the interpretations quite closely, and it's, you know, but then even from that point of view I felt that it felt like the author was just going, oh, I need to have this happen because it was in the myth, and I need to have this happen because it was in the myth, as opposed to actually picking and choosing what she would need for her actual story she's trying to tell. Like, you get the whole thing about Daedalus and Icarus escaping, like that happens, but like it just feels so random because his character is hardly important to the story apart from as a plot device. So then to suddenly be following the fact that they're, like, you know, now escaping, and Phaedra sort of sees it from a distance, and they do spend some time discussing it. It's just like, I don't know, it just kind of feels like a sort of tangent just because it happened in the original myth. So she felt like she had to discuss it. I don't know, like I said, it was just, yeah, there was a lot of things kind of just that felt shoehorned in here with no purpose to the wider story. You know, Ariadne's wedding crown becoming a star constellation just felt like a random, just, yeah, that happened in the myth, we're gonna have that happen. Yeah. So obviously once she gets to like Naxos and stuff, that's where she meets Dionysus from the original myth. You know, we all know that Ariadne does become Dionysus's wife, and I felt that his character as well, very underdeveloped. The romance I'm a bit sort of on, because I liked the fact that they were shown to have spent time together and they told each other stories and they really formed a connection on their relationship with their mothers, and how they both sort of have the same opinion on how all the other gods treat people. And Dionysus sort of, you know, swears that he's not like that, and, you know, he's not like all the other men. And but yeah, but then once they get married, you don't actually see them spend any time together. You know, she has children and stuff, and you never see Dionysus with his kids, you never see him in that family setting. You're just told that he's there, and then he's off on his journeys and stuff, and then he comes back. So it really just feels so, and it really feels very detached, and we're just so much of we're told that this thing's happened, we don't actually see it. So then when things happen later, I don't feel any connection, and it's supposed to be quite, you know, it's supposed to be sad or something, and I don't feel that because we weren't shown why we should care about their connection and their family in the first place. Another thing is that, you know, like I said, it's supposed to be a commentary on women and their agency and how in myths and in history they get erased. Yet both of our main characters have no agency and their entire stories revolve around men. Ariadne, you know, first of all revolves around Theseus, and then later her entire story revolves around Dionysus. Phaedra, according to the myth, she then gets shipped off to marry Theseus now that he's king of Athens, and again, her entire arc revolves around her trying to make her peace with now being married to the man that abandoned her sister, and then later on, as saying, you know, this is really spoiler, it is according to the original myth, falling in love with her stepson, again, just revolving around a man. She has no agency whatsoever, and any agency that she is shown to have happens off page. You know, we're just told that it happens instead of actually seeing her grow and develop and stand on her own 2 feet. Which bugs me, because then at the end it's just like, ah yes, about the women and stuff and how, you know, there's more to their stories. It's like, well, I would beg to differ reading this because you've not given me any more to their story. They're just tools for men. And that was not what I was promised when I went into reading this book. You know, Ariadne, you know, like I said, my favourite part was the beginning because Ariadne's actually actively involved. Once she marries Dionysus, that's basically it. You know, she becomes, you know, her story is that she's a mother. And we don't really see her relationships with the other women on the island. We don't see her, you know, we barely really see her think about her sisters and her family and her mother and what happened to them. Her purpose is just to be a mother and to be the wife of Dionysus, and she doesn't do anything. She just mooches about on the island giving birth to babies every couple of years and stuff. It's like, you know, poor women, but and that's it. You know, that's the author's just decided that that's all she needs to do, which, you know, is a shame because she could be a far more interesting character than that. But because this, yeah, I don't know, like, I just really didn't like her character at all. She was just so bland. And as I said, you know, we barely actually see her relationship with Dionysus after they get married. Yeah, Phaedra, as I said, ultimately her story is about her unrequited love for her stepson, and she again is not shown to have changed as a person or as a character across the story. You know, we're supposed to believe that she has been shipped across to Athens, she's had to marry Theseus, she's been there for years, we're told. She even gets involved in the politics of the city and actually becomes quite a good ruler and sort of manipulates all the other men to let her basically rule, because she sort of tricks them into thinking that this is all coming from Theseus so that they'll actually let her do something. But again, happens off page, and her story's just about how she falls in love with Hippolytus, and like, yeah, it's just, she's got no agency on page. Anything she does as a development of her character happens off page, and then as I said, once we get to towards the end, she's basically just shown to be exactly the same sort of 12-year-old child that she was at the beginning. It's like, oh, what was the point of having all that other stuff if she's not actually going to change as a person? I mean, one thing I did think was interesting, but like there was no commentary on, was that, as I said, Ariadne is shown to be a mother, and she's shown to be very happy in that role. Don't get me wrong, I'm not criticising women who like are happy with just being mothers and stuff. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that, you know, like I said, my problem is that like her entire arc just revolves around being a wife for Dionysus, and like, yeah, it just doesn't really fit in the context of the story in my opinion. But like, that's not what I'm saying. But then Phaedra, on the other hand, who does have 2 children, has no connection to them whatsoever, has no connection to motherhood. I thought that was an interesting sort of just comparison for Ariadne, who's very happy to have children, who loves them and loves her role, versus Phaedra, who just can't stand them and doesn't really want anything to do with them and finds it very difficult to naturally be a mum. So I thought that was an interesting comparison, but as I said, you know, there's no wider point to having that almost. Like, you know, there's no point to a lot of things that happen here. It's like, are you making a commentary? Are you exploring a theme? Like, no, it's kind of just this thing happens, then this thing happens, and this thing happens, and now they're dead. Ooh, Greek mythology. Woo. I don't know. Like I said, she keeps referencing the story of Medusa, and I honestly feel like she would be better off writing that story, because, you know, if you're going into this expecting something along the lines of Circe by Madeline Miller, I would say you're not going to get it. This is just, you know, that, but despite all I've said though, You know, it is a very good retelling of the story of Ariadne. It does go through a lot of the sort of story beats from the original myth and actually seeing things from her perspective. Same with her sister Phaedra. So, you know, from that point of view, it's a very good book, it's a very good story, it's a good retelling, but like, from the context of it wants to be a commentary on women and their erasure in myths and how Ariadne was sort of used by Theseus, we don't get any of that, because she's just basically a trophy wife for Dionysus for half the book, and again, like her sister, just doesn't learn her lesson about trusting men and things. Sorry if you can hear my smoke alarm, it needs to get its battery changed and I need to go and get batteries, and I haven't done that yet. So yeah, I don't know, like I said, I've got really just mixed opinions, because yes, it's a very good Greek mythology retelling, but it didn't deliver on any of the stuff it promised me, and I just found all the characters to be really bland and have no development, and yeah, I just didn't like any of them. I would have loved it if we'd seen Ariadne spending time with the nymphs and the maenads, the people that follow Dionysus. I can never say their name right. Begins with them. You know, there's never any development of any friendship she has there. We're just kind of told that she gets on really well with them, sort of thing. And there's like a small plot point where you find out why these women are all coming to this island to be sort of following Dionysus. But again, that's just not explored. We don't. It's just. Oh, I don't know. Yeah. I feel like I'm repeating myself and go around in circles. I don't really have anything spoiler to say, so I think I'll just leave it as a spoiler-free review. Yeah, this was just not as good as I thought it was going to be. It's just a shame because the cover is gorgeous. It's designed by Michaela Alcaino, who's one of my favourite artists, and you know, that's honestly one of the reasons why I wanted to pick it up in the first place. I saw it and I was like, ooh, a retelling of Ariadne, very interesting. And it wasn't very good. I didn't not like it, and the writing was like decent, but like not amazing. Yeah, just mixed feelings, because I didn't hate it, but I also didn't really like it. I don't think I'm ever going to really reread it either. That's a big tell. If I'm not going to reread something, that usually means that I don't think it's worth it. So, yeah. But anyway, I think that'll do it for now. Have you read Ariadne by Jennifer Saint? What did you think? Do you agree with anything I've said? Do you disagree with anything I've said? I love hearing all your opinions. Please comment. I love hearing from everybody and having a good discussion going in the comments section. Love to get that going. But yeah, what's your favourite Greek myth retelling so far? Mine is definitely Circe by Madeline Miller. That I'm just a bit of a... I very much enjoyed the fact that was sort of, you know, taking a villainous character and actually seeing their point of view. I thought that was very interesting. So yeah, please tell me what your favourite Greek mythology retelling has been so far, or just myth retelling in general from any culture. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.